Thank you, Mama Swift, for another beautiful pattern that is so simple. One row repeat that really makes such a beautiful fabric. I hope you guys enjoy playing with colors. And as Mama Swift says, but keep the sparkle. Bye bye. She says you can keep it. Okay, I will. Bye. Good morning, my loves, and welcome to Sweet Marshmallow Kiss, the tutorial to supplement Mama Swift's written pattern. This is a Boggy style Camp Boggy Creek blanket, but can be used for anything. This project is going to be approximately a 40 by 40 inch square and using, let's see, she says approximately 2,000 yards of a 4-weight yarn using the corresponding hook for the yarn you need, a darning needle and some scissors. All right, let's get after it. Ready, set, go. Let us begin. I am using Baby Bee Soft and Sleek Low Pill. This is a 4-weight yarn, and I'm using a size J hook that the yarn, uh, what is that? It calls for it. All right, so we started with our slip knot on the hook, and we are going to chain. I am going to chain 4. So here you can either chain 4 or you can do a magic ring. And we are going to be working back into that first chain. So you could also slip stitch, make your ring and work in the ring, but I'm just going to use this first stitch to work in. And so what we're going to start with are treble clusters. And a treble cluster is 3 trebles together is another way of saying it. So the beginning one, we start with our chain 4 and we're going to yarn over twice and go back into that first chain and do a treble. But what we're going to do, what we're going to do is at the last loop, we're going to hold. Okay, so we have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over twice again, go back into that first chain and start your treble, but stop at the last loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now we have 3 chains on our hook, and you can see 1, 2, 3. We are going to yarn over and pull through all 3. There's your first beginning cluster. Then we're going to chain 1 to move on. I like to use that. Juan uses that. He says chain 1 to move on. Uh-oh. My little thing here was all tangled. Give me 2 seconds. All right, hold please. There we go. All right, so now we're going to go back into this first chain again. We're going to yarn over. We're going to yarn over twice. Go back into there. Start your treble. Pull through 2. Pull 2. Pull through 2 and hold. Yarn over twice. We're going to do this 3 times. Go into the first chain. Pull through 2. Pull 2. Pull through 2 and hold. All right, we're going to do it one more time. Yarn over twice, go into that first chain, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now we have 4 loops on our hook. Remember on the beginning one, we only had 3, but now going forward, we will have 4 loops on our hook. We'll yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. There is our next cluster. Chain 1 to move on. Okay, we are going to do this for a total of 8 clusters. So I'm just going to quietly do this and let you guys watch because I'm not going to skip to the end. I'm just going to stay here with you. So here we go. Yarn over twice, pull through 2, hold. Yarn over twice, pull through 2, hold. One more time. Pull through 2, pull through 2, and hold. 4 loops, go through all 4 loops, chain 1 to move on. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3. We have 3. We need 5 more. Yarn over twice, the little end out of the way. Pull through 2, and hold. Yarn over twice, pull through 2, and hold. Yarn over twice, pull through 2, and hold. We've got our 4 loops, go through all 4 loops, and chain 1 to move on. Okay, we got one more. Seven, eight. Okay, move on. And now we're to the end. We come back to our beginning cluster. You can kind of see that is, what do we do? That was one of the chains. We actually pull this. You can see 1, 2, 3, oops. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see this is the chain 1. We want to go right into the top of that. We're going to yarn over and we're going to do a half double to close. Okay. So there we are. You can come through and you can pull them apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Little end out of the way. And there is round 1. Hello. Okay, here we go. Round 2. And what we're going to do now is we are going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and turn. And what we're going to do is we're going to work right back into that with the beginning of our corner, our first corner. So yarn over twice, do a beginning cluster. So that's yarn over twice, pull through 2, pull through 2, yarn over twice, pull through 2, pull through 2. Got 3 on our hook. We're going to pull through all 3. We're going to chain 1 to move on. First thing we're going to do is around this cluster coming out of the corners, we're going to go around it for a front post double. Okay, chain 1 to move on. And in that chain space, we're going to work a cluster. So yarn over twice, pull through 2, pull through 2, 2 more times, 2 and 2, 2 and 2, 4, pull through all 4, chain 1 to move on. Around, so go in behind and do a front post double around that cluster. Okay, chain 1 to move on. And then now we're going to go into this next space and we're going to create our first full corner. That first one over here is just a half corner. Okay, so yarn over twice and into that space we're going to do a cluster, 2 and 3 treble, pull through all 4, and now we are going to chain 2. 1, 2 in the corners will always be 2 clusters with chain 2 in the middle. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, pull through, chain 1 to move on. So there's our first corner, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put that little stitch marker there just to help identify so we don't accidentally go over the top of it because I did do that. Shh, don't tell. Okay, so now we're going to go around this next cluster with a double, front post double, chain 1 to move on, and into that corner we're going to do a treble, cluster, 2, 1 more time, 3, okay, and then pull through all 4 and chain 1 to move on. Front post double around the next, chain 1 to move on, and here is our next corner. Okay, so we're going to do our corner, which is 2 treble clusters. Oops, I didn't get my yarn over. Separated by a chain 2. 1 more treble. Okay, pull through all 4, chain 1, and chain 1 again. So we have chain 2. 1 more cluster in the same space. So the same space. 2, and 1 more time, and 3. Okay, pull through all 4 and chain 1 to move on. There's our next corner. So let's put in another marker. Okay, front post around that next cluster and chain 1, and then into the chain space, just a cluster, regular cluster. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, pull through and chain 1 to move on. And now we're to our next corner. Oops, let me get that. I should have sewed that in. All right, now we're going to front post around, chain 1 to move on, and here is our next corner. So do our corner trebles. 1, 2, and 3. These are 4 loops. Pull through all 4 and chain 2, and then 1 more cluster. 1, 2, 3. Pull through all 4 and chain 1 to move on. Let's do our last little stitch marker. Okay. Front post around that cluster, chain 1 to move on. And here is our last, itchy nose today, our last space. So we're going to do 1 treble cluster and 3. Okay. And chain 1 to move on. Grab our cluster with a front post double, chain 1 to move on. And now in this last one where we have the half already done, we're going to do a treble cluster. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Pull through, and now just chain 1 to move on. And then right here we are going to do, see, like I said, 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th we are going to, excuse me, that's into the 3rd chain. We are going to, right into the top of that, do a half double to close it. Okay. So there is round 2. Ready, set, go for number 3. All right, round 3. This is our repeat row. So this is the one that you will repeat over and over and over until you get to the dimensions that you like. So far, that's what we got. Beautiful, beautiful. We're going to start the row with chaining 3. 1, 2, and 3, and turn your work. You will turn your work after every row, okay? This is what helps put the texture on both sides, okay? Now into this, we're going to do our beginning half corner cluster. So yarn over twice. Let's do that twice. Sorry, the stitch markers are making noise on the table. So there's our 1, 2, 3, our beginning corner cluster. Okay, chain 1 to move on. Now here is our cluster. We're going to yarn over and we're going to do a front post double around it. Okay, chain 1. And then this is where, like on the row before this, we're working in the spaces. Now every cluster is going to go into the top of that front post double. Okay, so we're going to yarn over twice, go right into the top of it, and do your trebles, your treble cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Through all 4 and chain 1 to move on. Now here is our cluster. We are going to put a front post cluster into that one, chain 1 to move on, and then here is our other double. Okay, so we're going to yarn over twice, go into, you can see the little triangle of it, go right into the top of it, and do your treble cluster. 2 and 3, Pull through all 4, chain 1 to move on. Grab your front post double around the previous cluster, chain 1 to move on. And here is our corner. Every corner will be a cluster, chain 2, cluster. Okay, so yarn over twice, cluster into the space, 2 and 3, chain 2, and then cluster. Stitch marker. Okay. Chain 1 to move on, and then grab your cluster with the front post. That's all it is. Cluster, front post, cluster, front post, and then your corners. Okay, chain 1 to move on, and then here is our first double. Cluster right into the top of it. Pull through 4, chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster with the front post. Chain 1 to move on. Cluster into the top of the double. Chain 1 to move on. Now here is our corner. Double around, front post double around the first cluster, chain 1 to move on, and now do your corner clusters in that chain space. So here we go. 1, 2, and 3. Pull through 4, chain 2, and then the second cluster. Oops, I only yarned over once. There we go. Just going around my stitch marker. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster with the front post double. Chain 1, and then here is our double. Okay. Cluster into the top of the double. And pull through all 4, chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster with the front post double, chain 1 to move on. And then here is our double for our cluster. So 1, oops, excuse me. So 1, 2, and 3. Pull through all 4 loops, chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster with the front post double, chain 1 to move on, and here we are on our next corner. This is our last pass, so let's treble, because I keep going too far, sorry about that. And 1 more. Pull through all 4, chain 2, cluster, 1 more. Okay, we've got our 3. Pull through all 4 loops, chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster for front post double, chain 1 to move on, and there is our next double. Right into the top of it with a cluster. Oops. I was looking at the screen. I got all discombobulated. cluster, pull through all four, chain one to move on. Grab that cluster with the front post double, chain one, cluster into the top of the double. Oops, there I go again. One more. And pull through all three and chain one. Okay. Grab that. Now this one, it looks a little different because you've got your chain, but you want to grab all of that. Make sure to grab all of it, okay, for your front post double. Okay, that was our beginning one. It looked a little funky because it's got that chain three right there, but you want to grab all of it. Now chain one to move on, and then into that space, you finish the last cluster, 2 and 3. Okay, chain one to move on, and now we're going to half double into the top. See, anatomy. This is the double, this is your chain one, and this is the top of the cluster right there. Okay, do a half double. And now that is number 3, and the final, you'll just keep doing row 3 until the end. I'm going to come back for row 4 to show you how to change colors, and then I'm going to let you go on your own and to make the beautiful things. Thank you for joining us. Oh no, I've got one more row left. Ready, set, go. Okay, so now for round 4, you can either, right here, what I like to do when I snip off is I chain 2, snip it off, and then pull this, and then you pull that and you snip it off. Or you can leave it intact if you're going to be going, side to side, or not side to side, what is that called? Back and forth between colors. So you would yarn over, go into the top, and stop. Just leave that there, drop your other yarn, grab your new yarn, okay? And I just put a loop around my finger like that, and I grab it, okay? And then I pull it through all of this, okay? And then you kind of tighten it down, and then with your new color, do your chain 3. 1, 2, 3, okay? So then you can come back and you can just tie this. I like to tie it to give it a little bit of stability. Do 2 little box knot, do a box knot, okay? And now you can snip this off or keep it going if you're going to go back and forth between colors and just carry it along. I'm going to leave it on there because I am going to put purple in between every other row. Okay, so for this blanket. All right, so here we are. We did our chain 3, and now we want to turn. Okay, and we just start doing your normal. You do your beginning corner cluster. That's 1 treble and hold. Start the second treble and hold, pull through 3 and chain 1 to move on. Now here's our cluster. Gonna go front post around the whole thing, chain 1 to move on. I should have grabbed my other yarn genie. Okay, and then here is our double, which that's where we're going to put our cluster. 1, 2, and 3 into the top of that double. Okay, pull through 4 loops, chain 1 to move on. Front post double around that cluster, chain 1, and then cluster into the double. Yarn over twice. 1, 2, and 3. Pull through 4, chain 1 to move on. Grab your cluster with the front post double and chain 1, treble into the top. 1, 2, and 3. Pull through all 4, chain 1. Front post, oh, careful, don't get the leg of the double. Front post around that cluster. Chain 1 to move on. Okay, and now we're at our corner. So in that corner, do your corner trebles or your corner clusters. So that's 1, 2, 3, pull through 4, chain 2 for your corner, and then do your second cluster. 1, 2, 1 more, and 3. Okay, pull through all 4, chain 1 to move on. Front post around that cluster, chain 1, and then cluster. All right, so I think you guys should be able to get this from here. Let me just end with my front post. Front post, chain 1. Okay, so that is all you're going to do, is you're just going to turn after every row. You are going to put cluster, chain 2, cluster in your corners, and you're just going to keep going and going and going until you come to the end. And this is a really easy, we may come back and do a supplementary tutorial to show you how to make squares, and then be able to go join as you go. So I'll talk to Trisha about that one. Maybe we'll talk about doing that as, like I said, a supplementary. So, yep. So that's all you're going to do is treble cluster, chain 2, treble cluster, chain 1 to move on, front post double around the cluster, and then into the double crochet, you'll do a cluster, chain 1 to move on, around the cluster, cluster in the thing. That's it. This is Sweet Marshmallow Kiss, all for you. Keep it simple, stitches. Here we are, my loves. I just kept going round and round and changing this one, I changed the color, or I transferred colors each row. So, and I just carried it up through the center. I mean, you can kind of see it a little bit. I don't think I would ever do that again, because in some spots you can kind of see it, but you can cut off, but I didn't want ends. I just want where I joined. That's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for being a part of Boggy Creek or using this blanket for whatever fits your needs. Have a wonderful time making beautiful things.